Good afternoon, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I think there might be a few folks still connecting, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, Thank you for joining us today on DRPT's Commuter Assistance Program Grant Workshop for fiscal year 2025 grants. This meeting is being recorded. We will post the recording for those who want to review. It will also have the slide deck, or if some folks in your agency could not make the meeting, they can also take a look at the recording. So thanks. My name is Chris Arabia. I'm the manager of statewide commuter programs for DRPT. You'll be hearing from me and a couple of other DRPT folks on the grant program, and hopefully you'll learn a little bit of what we have to offer. All right, next slide. So this is our agenda for today. So today we're just going to cover some things. Hopefully, some of this might be new to you. It'll be good learning about what our funding opportunities are for commuter assistance programs or transportation demand management projects in various grant programs at DRPT, but mainly the commuter assistance program. And we will also be doing a little demonstration of the web grants application system on how you get in there and complete a CAP application. Okay, next slide. Now, more details on the Commuter Assistance Program and other DRPT grant opportunities are in our Transit and Commuter Assistance Grant Application Manual, also called the Blue Book, and that a link to that is located on the DRPT website. And at the end of the presentation, we'll show you where these resources are. Some key dates to remember. December 1st, we open up the new web grants for applications. The last day to submit an application in web grants is February 1st. It's May 1st if you're submitting an application for the 5303 program. And then after February 1st, DRPT starts reviewing applications, making our recommendations for approvals of what we want to approve and funding amounts. We do that through February through April. About there, sometime in April, we do need to have a draft 6-year improvement program, which is basically all of our recommendations for grants for fiscal year 2025. That SIP, as we call it, needs to be presented to the CTB in draft form at their April meeting. The CTB meaning Commonwealth Transportation Board. They're the final approvals of who gets funded, and it comes off of that 6-year improvement program. There are public hearings and public comment period that usually happens in April and May, where you and the public can weigh in on the 6-year improvement program. And then in their June meeting, the Commonwealth Transportation Board will take up the final version of the 6-year improvement program and approve it. And then that's when we know things are definitely approved for funding. And then DRPT starts to develop agreements for those projects in the June, July timeframe. Usually it's late June because the CTB usually meets late in June. And then the fiscal year begins July 1st, and that's when the awards become available for drawing down or incurring expenditures. Okay, next slide. So let me talk a little bit about funding. The Commuter Assistance Program is funded through the Special Projects Fund, which is 2.5% of the Mass Transit Fund. So it's not a set aside just for the Commuter Assistance Program. There's a set aside for all special projects, and you'll hear a little bit more about those special projects. We don't know exactly how much that is until the state's Planning and Budget Office provides us with the details of that, how much that is. And because the Mass Transit Fund is funded through various taxes and fees throughout the Commonwealth. So the special projects not only doesn't include the Commuter Assistance Program, but it also includes 3 other grant programs that could be used for transportation demand management projects. Next. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of those other special projects, grant programs. So the 3 of them are the Workforce Development Grant Program, Technical Assistance, and the Demonstration Project Assistance. And more on those on these grants can actually be, you can learn about more on these in the transit grant workshop, which is happening on this Thursday, the 14th. So if you haven't signed up for that workshop and you want to learn more about these and other transit grants, please register for that. Okay, Miriam, next slide. So the Workforce Development Grant Program, um, it's it's for apprentices. So it's really to bring in people so that they can learn about transportation, transit, commuter assistance, transportation management to pursue a career in that. So it's not for an intern or some part-time person. You need some help around the office doing some things. It's actually for an apprentice type of program. So these you're going to hire someone who's either learning or going to school or just out of school, who's learning about the industry and is looking for a career in that industry. Typically, it's something where your agency has a position that this person could then roll into, so they complete this program. And we fund it, this can be funded at an 80% state, 20% local match. And we've had a couple of folks who used this to hire someone to help to learn about the commuter assistance program and the TDM program. So it can be used for other things other than just the transit side of things. Okay, next. The second special project, and some of you may have even gotten one of these grants, is technical assistance grant. That is for any type of plan, study, research, data collection, evaluation, feasibility study, the commuter assistance program, strategic plans, transportation plans. All of those are qualify for the technical assistance. It is a 50-50 match, so it's 50% state, 50% local match. So it's a little higher match rate, but it covers a variety of analysis and studies and plans and things like that. So this is what you could use, if you don't have a TDM program or community assistance program to develop your program. All right, next slide. The demonstration project really is not geared towards commuter assistance or TDM, but I want to just point out it is part of the funding for the special projects, and it's really to kind of take the risk out of being innovative and trying new and piloting new services in transit or some other types of non-traditional transit services. And it is an 80-20 match with a 80% state, 20% local match. We've funded some piloted microtransit with that. All right, now I'm going to talk to you about the main topic is the Commuter Assistance Program, grant program. Now I'm going to give you just a little bit of highlights, and then I'll turn it over to Kathy Moline and Gabe Ortiz, who will go into more details on the two types of funding opportunities. So the Commuter Assistance Program consists of two funding opportunities. One is CAP operating, the other one is CAP project assistance, and both of those are an 80-20, 80% state funded, 20% local match requirement. Okay. So the purpose of the Commuter Assistance Grant Program is really to increase the use of transit, van pooling, and carpooling. That's the main purpose of these grants, of this program. It's also to increase the number of ride match requests. We have a statewide ride matching system, and then there's another one in Northern Virginia. We need people to use those, right? We need to encourage folks to use those systems to find out more about their options, their travel options, and then to ultimately use them. So those two bullet points are the main purpose of this grant opportunity. And then it has the added effects of reducing vehicle miles traveled, addressing some traffic congestion, reducing air pollution, and saving fuel. Okay, next. So just highlight a few changes that we made in FY25. And again, these are in what we called the Blue Book, the Transit and Commuter Assistance Program grant application guidance. So the big change, and you may be aware, is that the grants are now being submitted through web grants. So no more Olga, no more online. It's still an online grant administration tool, but it's now called web grants. And that's the biggest change, and like I said, we'll do a little demonstration on how that could work, later on in the presentation. The benefit of going to web grants is no supplemental applications. So if you submitted applications for the commuter systems program in the past, you know that there was an online version of the application or online part of the application, and then you had to download a document that we call the supplemental application and complete that. So that's no longer there. Everything is in web grants. So you fill the whole thing online through web grants. So that's a good change. Um, there's also some changes to the program itself. We've done some more emphasis areas of things that we'll be, paying attention to while we review applications. One is a change to the eligibility for who can go to conferences or out-of-state travel. Another change is what's eligible for folks who go out and just count cars at park and ride lots. Also, we're going to pay a little bit more attention to staff expenses, who's charging to the project, and what actually they are working on the project, including grant administration expenses. We've noticed that those expenses just to administer the grant have been getting pretty high in some cases, and that should not be the case, right? We need to roll those back and find out why it's costing so much just to administer a grant that you get. We don't want to cost more money to administer a grant or make it not even worthwhile to get a grant. So we definitely want to pay attention to that when you're doing your application. And then we've made some adjustments to the scoring of the applications that we use for evaluation in our recommendations. Okay, next slide. So how do we review the applications? We'll talk more in details about these as we go through, but just in general, to note, your application, when you submit it, it goes through multiple people here at DRPT that are looking at that. So make sure you're putting your information in accordingly. So you're not just applying to your DRPT program manager that you may know really well, and they may know what you do and how well you do it. You're not applying to them. You're applying to the agency. So there's a lot of folks that, or a few folks that look at it. It's going to go through at least 3 reviews. And then when we start going internally and talking about recommendations for funding, when we develop the secure improvement program, I mean, our division chief, our director, sometimes the CFO and people at finance also look at this. So if they're looking at your application, they need to understand what the money is going towards and what the benefits are. As I mentioned, there are some scoring changes, so there is a specific scoring for each of the 2 funding opportunities. Generally, we look at it like, is this a good investment for the Commonwealth? Are we getting some value out of these projects that we're going to fund? And then we ask for results. That's the whole purpose of this grant program, is to get some type of result. And we want to see if those results in the application are realistic, and do they meet the goals or objectives of DRPT and the Commuter Systems Grant Program. The other thing with results is that we need to be able to measure them. So we could say, hey, we're getting a good result, but if we can't measure it, we can't prove it. So we need to be able to accurately measure these results. And then over the course of the whole review process, including up until we've got that approved 6-year improvement program, the DRPT manager, your program manager, will reach out to you if they have any questions about your application, about information to get clarification or anything like that. Okay, next slide. So before we move on, I will take some questions here, and feel free to put your questions in the chat. If you don't feel like you want to do a chat, write your question down. If you want to raise your hand, we can unmute you so that you can use your talk to answer the question or get your question done. I think there is a chat question. Oh, that was just if there is a question. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Joe Stansby, you have a question.
Yeah, hey Chris, thank you. So you mentioned earlier that you've made some changes into your evaluation of grant applications versus prior years. Will you be detailing those changes so that
Yes.
we can know like what areas to focus on, maybe versus previous years or something like that?
Yes, we'll be detailing
Okay,
both the cap
thank you.
operating and the cap project uh, scoring. Yes. All right. Any other questions? And again, feel free to put questions in the chat as we go. We will make sure we get to everyone as we go through, and then we'll pause periodically to answer those questions. And of course, at the end there'll be some time too. So, um, is there a question in the chat?
Yes.
Okay. Um, so Marcus asked about, can we elaborate more on the administrative changes and how they would be viewed differently? So, um, we've seen we know that when you get a grant from us, there's administrative charges, right? Even if we hired a contractor to do work, there's always an administrative expense to manage that project, to do the things that need to do on the administration of that grant. And so those things could be anywhere from preparing, invoices to paying vendors to putting things together for DRPT, submitting them as needed. Those are the administrative stuff. So those are things that, because you have a grant, you have to do. Um, those should be relatively low. They should not get close to the actual operating costs of the project or program. And so that's kind of what we're going to see. And we've seen some really high administrative costs when we looked at all the folks, all the people in charges and staff that are doing those administrative functions, and not the people who are out there trying to get people out of their cars, trying to get people into transit, trying to get people to use the ride matching system. Those are the expenses we want to see. It's those admin things of, like I said, paying the bills, submitting reimbursement requests to DRPT, maybe, meeting with your program manager, and giving them some, project updates and things like that. So that's what we see as administrative. We want to keep those things low. So, yeah, so it is. So what we're seeing is some of those charges get put into the application. They are actually part of the grant. And so that's where we want to make sure that that's not, 30% of the project is, all admin. We want to, that's really high. So that's kind of what we mean by administrative charges. Okay. All right. All right. I don't see anything in the chat. No hands are raised. So we're going to move on. But like I said, if you think of a question, go ahead and throw it into the chat. We'll get to it. So now I want to turn it over to Kathy Moline, and she's going to give you more details about the CAP operating funding opportunity. Kathy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next slide, Miriam. So this is a map that shows the current existing commuter assistant programs that receives grant funding from us. So I pretty much do everything but Northern Virginia. So we're you'll see Connecting VA on there, which is also part of DRPT. So anyone who is on this call that may be interested in establishing a new commuter assistant program, they should contact a DRPT program manager and discuss the requirements that we have for establishing a program before applying for the grant funding. Next slide. As you are planning your FY25 grant, it's important to keep these objectives and to focus on what we are looking for. We want you to achieve a measurable year-to-year increase in the number of people using a DRPT approved ride matching system. So that includes the Connecting VA system through Agile Mile, as well as commuter connections, and to obtain travel and commute mode options information. And also we want you to focus on achieving a measurable increase in the use of carpool, vanpool, and transit. Next slide. And this is a gentle reminder, and Chris touched on this a little bit, that eligible expenses are day-to-day operations, using approved ride matching services, public outreach, website and phone numbers, guaranteed emergency ride home programs, marketing, outreach, and promotion of carpool, vanpooling, and transit. Next slide. Again, eligible staff expenses for day-to-day operations. And as Chris mentioned, this includes the administration of the program. So financial staff that help you with the budget, with submitting claims, which is the new word for reimbursements, any contractors that you're hiring, marketing, etc. Staff expenses must be reasonable administrative costs for those providing direct assistance to the program. And they should be, as Chris mentioned, a small part of the grant and achieve a measurable increase in the use of carpool, vanpool, and transit. We do look at your staff level and work tasks for evaluation. I'll touch on that a little bit more when we look at the scoring rubric, as well as how it affects the cost effectiveness of your program. Is this an efficient program that achieves the maximum results with minimal costs? And your grant administration costs, like Chris mentioned, should be much less than the cost to implement activities to get people to request a ride match and use transit, carpool, and vanpool. Next slide. Chris had mentioned that there was some staff changes, expense changes in the eligibility. The one I'm going to talk about first is conferences, training, out of state, and overnight travel. May be eligible only for primary program operations staff that spend a minimum of 50% of their job duties on the operation of the CAP program. Conferences, training, out of state, and overnight travel is expensive. And we don't always necessarily see any results for the goals of the program. Ineligible travel and staff time and inventory review or counts for VDOT park and ride lots. This again doesn't achieve the goals of our program. If VDOT is requesting you to do park and ride lot inventories and your agency receives VDOT planning funds, please use that for any VDOT park and ride related travel and staff time. Travel and time charged for non-VDOT park and ride lots is not necessarily a given that it will be paid out for this grant. And we want you to talk to Chris Gabe or I before you, as you're doing your application, if you do include other park and ride lots. Salary fringe, indirect costs and other expenses associated with the operation, administration, and management of other programs or projects, including those funded by federal and state, cannot be charged to this grant. And this includes working and planning any events or conferences. Next slide, please. Program description is where we have a lot of applications struggle. So we don't want or need your vision. We don't want your history of your agency. We don't need to know any of awards that you've won. We don't need justification of why you need the money. What we want to know is what you're doing with the funding for your program. Next slide. So this is an example of a program description that we're looking for. Your program description needs to highlight how your project will be implemented, what will be done with the funding. So it must be complete and clearly show us how or what the funds will be spent on. What services are you providing? What activities will occur? How the program serves the public? What operational systems are being used and what will they be used for? Next slide. So a little later in the presentation, I'm going to show you how to do a CAP operating application. And this is a sample of what your operating costs, which used to be your budget, will look like in web grants. So we have the budget category, the list of expenses, and the requested amount, just like we did with your supplemental app. We still will require a breakdown of each budget category that you use. We want you to list the expenses and list the cost breakdown. And again, I'll show you more in the demonstrations. Next slide. Milestones and events. This is very important information for Gabe, Chris, and I. When we review your app, not only review your application, but it's important to us to have this information for your monthly meetings, for quarterly meetings, to make sure that your program is on track, within budget, and in line with the contract that you signed. Milestone events, it also must pair with your operating cost. If it's listed in your operating costs, it must be in the milestones. Sometimes we'll all have an application where they've listed guaranteed ride home, but they've not budgeted for it. So we want to make sure that these pair up when you're doing your application. And again, I'll have more details when we do the demonstration. Next slide. So, as Chris mentioned, Chris, Gabe, and I are not the only ones that review your application. Upper management also reviews and meets with us to discuss each and every application and our recommendations and what they are. This is discussed all the way up to the director. We can remove ineligible and unnecessary expenses during the application review and evaluation. We can also recommend a lower funding amount than what was requested. Another important thing to remember is just because it's in your application, it doesn't mean it was an approved expense. So when Gabe and I meet with you after everything goes to the SIP, we'll meet with you and we'll talk about what was approved and what was not approved in your application. Next slide. So Chris mentioned there's a new scoring rubric. Last year it was, I think, 75 possible scores. So we all met and we looked at what we needed and what we felt was the most important to score these. Scoring emphasizes results and cost effectiveness. And as I mentioned earlier, low ranked applications may not be funded or funded at a lower amount than requested. So project description, I went over that earlier. Marketing and promotion, your score will depend on how well the marketing and promotional activities are defined. Milestone event descriptions, again, these must contain detailed milestones, events, and other activities important to the operation of your program. Staff level and work tasks. This is evaluated and scored based on staffing charges and work tasks of all staff charged to the program. Included in the evaluation scoring is the amount of the funds dedicated to grant administration and program operations. Budget detail, a well-detailed description of all expenses is critical to the evaluation and scoring of your program. Your score depends on proper use of expense categories and the listing of each and every expense. The cost effectiveness, this score reflects on an efficient program that achieves maximum results with minimum costs. The number of rideshare requests and the program cost to achieve these results will be considered. Next slide. So, as mentioned, we do evaluate your previous ride matching trends. We calculate the cost effectiveness of your application, the history of your grant administration, any previous grant administration, and we also look at your current grants, your reimbursements, now called claims, and the timeliness and accuracy of reporting to DRPT. And it's important to know that prior award funding under this grant does not guarantee the continuous or future award of funds. And I'll turn it over to questions, Chris.
I'll give it a second. I don't see any questions in the chat, and no
Okay,
one's got their hands raised just yet. So
okay.
maybe everyone's just thinking, or you did such a great job. You answered other questions. Wait, here comes one.
Okay.
Okay, so how do we choose dates for milestones for our marketing campaigns tied to DRPT campaigns when the dates of DRPT campaigns frequently change? Well, that's a good question. Yes. So we haven't always stuck on our dates. We've kind of moved things around based on certain things that beyond our control. Make your best guess. I would say certainly talk to us. We can give you some idea, at least what our planned campaign dates are for our statewide marketing campaigns, and we can give you that information to the best of our knowledge at the time. And if things change, we can always change the dates and the milestones. So that's not a problem. But yeah, just we'll talk to us first. We'll give you some dates, and then you're good to go. If they change, if our dates change, obviously we don't hold that against you.
Right, right.
uh, how to assess an abilities to administer a grant. So I think if you want to go back to the previous slide, um, I think what Kathy was saying was that if you have outstanding grants open from us right now and you haven't executed them, you haven't moved forward with things, we're going to question like, can you handle another grant? I think that's really
Right.
what this is really getting at. It's about, are you biting off more than you can chew, so to speak? Do you have too many open grants and then you're asking for more? And we're going to have to look at that a little bit, harder. Like, can you handle a new one if these others aren't going that well? So that's what we mean by ability to administer grants. Okay, good. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All
I'll
right.
see you in a bit.
All right, we're going to move on to the CAP Project Assistance Grant Funding Opportunity, and Gabe Ortiz will provide the information and details on that. Take it away, Gabe.
All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kathy. Gabe Ortiz. I am I think we might have a few new folks on the phone, so I'll just briefly say who I am. I'm basically Kathy's counterpart up here in Northern Virginia. And I'm going to go over the CAP project assistance grants. There's a few of them here. And we definitely have some changes, but also I just want to, as a caveat, say a lot of what Kathy went over in really great detail applies to the CAP project. So hopefully I'll touch on those things that do kind of set these apart, but keep that in mind as we go through a lot of the what Kathy went over does apply to the CAP project assistance. Next slide. So this kind of falls under that category of repeating here, but I think this is worth doing so. Here's an overview of the CAP project assistance. Pretty much like the CAP operating, the main focus of these projects and any project that falls under CAP project assistance will have to support TDM projects. Now we do have separate buckets where we can put these different projects, but really the aim is to move people from the SOV into other types of non-SOV modes of travel, which primarily comes down to carpools, van pools, and transit. So it's pretty critical that you keep that in mind as you go through the different your different projects. One thing we want to also emphasize is we can't fund everything with these projects. So make sure you check the blue book, but couple things that we do want to stay away from are recreational biking projects. While extremely important, we really don't fund safety projects and projects that are primarily about awareness. They have to, again, be able to achieve some kind of increase in whether it's carpools, van pools, and all the other non-SOV modes of travel. Next slide. Again, really quickly, the project assistance eligible applicants, pretty much the same as cap operating, with the big difference being van pool providers. So hopefully we have a few of you guys on today, but that is really the only difference when looking at the two opportunities, funding opportunities. And obviously these are also 80-20 matches. Next slide. All right, you'll notice, and I think Kathy will be able to demonstrate this. If not, it's definitely something you'll encounter when you do apply, or if you already tried to apply for a CAP project assistance. This year, as you guys know, we're not going to have the supplemental apps. That's the good news. And I guess the further good news is, you can quickly just decide which grant you want to apply for right through the system. You have an actual drop-down menu, and you can choose, and I'll go into details of what they are now. But yeah, that's going to be a major difference from last year's or previous year's process. And then one kind of bit of guidance that we want to throw out there. So this applies to everything, applies more to probably what we call the other projects opportunity, but we want everything you apply for to be fleshed out. We don't really want to see anything aspirational or see anything that kind of leaves out details. So make sure whatever you apply for, especially for the other projects, application is a fully scoped out deal. Next slide. So here are those buckets that I was referring to. You can choose if you have a project, it'll be contingent for you to see where it falls into, whether it's employer trip reduction, van pool, transit marketing, or that other projects. Now, you're not limited to these. Obviously, with that last bullet, the other projects, we do open it up for a variety of different types of TDM projects, but primarily this is where they're all going to be categorized into with CAP project assistance. Next slide. All right, so the first one that I'll be talking about is employer trip reductions. This is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris and Kathy, I think year 2 of us having and sticking with this formal title. Anything that's related to your typical traditional employer outreach initiatives will be funded out of this project. Next slide. Here are the objectives, pretty straightforward, again, similar to last year's. A few things I want to emphasize here as you take a look at this slide on your own is that this is a sales-oriented type of project. So we really do expect to see those types of kind of tactics and activities related or demonstrated in your application. We kind of feel employers have to be sold on doing something like a transit benefit or any kind of incentive. And so we think you need to be pretty proactive in your outreach to them. I think something else to keep in mind is like I said, we want all activities to kind of be based around the outreach to employers. So however you find that, think you can do that, we'll entertain, but typically that does involve kind of the tried and true tactics like phone calls, emailing, direct emails to individuals, setting up the on-site meetings. Obviously, follow-up is a big deal. As we know, not everybody always answers the phone on the first time or an email that first couple days. So follow-up is so key. And so really, yeah, your efforts should be centered around getting employers to both offer and give commuter benefits. Keep that in mind as you go through your application. One thing we want to avoid is we've had applications like this in the past, is have applications that are centered around a marketing initiative, something along the lines of a newsletter or anything that, that's those are, we see those as good kind of supplemental tactics, but should not be the main focus of what your grant is in your application. Next slide. And this is kind of echoing what I just said. We do have the employer levels that we're not going to go into in detail like we did last year, but keep in mind we do like the employers to be classified into these levels and have your activities help move employers through these levels. One other, I guess, thing here I want to emphasize is in order to keep your activities kind of both organized and also able to be able to run reports, we require that a CRM is used, or a customer relations management system. So make sure any new grantees out there, especially, this is a requirement for any employer outreach grant that's going to be applied for. In the purple book, you will find the metrics that we require to be reported on regularly. One thing I'll add this year is it's probably good practice to make sure you look at those metrics closely and really build your program, your application around those metrics. I think that's a good rule of thumb. They are kind of like the backbone of what you should be doing. And really, again, it's a requirement to report on those. So it's a good place to start. Look at those metrics and say, all right, how can we build a program around these metrics and around fulfilling what's needed for these metrics? Next slide. So moving into the next project that's eligible under CAP project assistance are Vanpool projects. Pretty simple. Supports Vanpool projects that increase Vanpooling. That took a long time for us to come up with, but it's I'm just joking, but that's really the gist of this. There's some nuances here, but again, that's kind of gets to the point of what we want to get accomplished with these projects. Next slide. So again, pretty straightforward. Here are the objectives. This is more broken down. I would say the first two bullets are really kind of more outcomes of what we'd like to have generated by what would be the last three bullets, really. So the last three bullets really are kind of what's available to you. Now, I don't want anybody to be kind of cornered into this. Typically, we think the Vanpool VanSave is what gets funded out of here, and that model's great. But we are always open to other suggestions and other ways to really accomplish what those first two bullets are, which is increase the Vanpool ridership and really increasing the number of vans in the Commonwealth. So don't feel like you are kind of cornered into doing the Van Start VanSave, even though it is, again, tried and true and has worked in the past, and a lot of our programs have used it, and a lot of our commuters are kind of used to seeing that. But yeah, really, we don't want to corner anybody into thinking that this is all we'll fund. And of course, the last thing we do, which we haven't seen too much of in the past, but we also want to fund those projects that will collect data specifically for the purpose of the National Transit Database. So there's a lot more detail on that. I don't want to belabor that too much here in the presentation. If you have any questions about how that works, but you can really get the whole lowdown on how that works in our various guidance books. I think that would be in the blue book. So so yeah, if you are contemplating that, make sure to look into the blue book, and also definitely reach out to either myself or Kathy to kind of flesh that out as you do your application. Next slide. So here's what pretty much you can and can't spend on with Vanpool. As I mentioned, I don't want you to think this is an end all be all list. Here's just a starting point. I guess the biggest takeaway is we don't want to fund those what we would call operational costs for Vanpools, the kind of nuts and bolts, literally the fuels and the tires and the maintenance. That's something we will not fund with this grant. But really, any other kind of incentive or any other way to increase Vanpool ridership and the number of Vanpools is definitely on the table. And obviously, as I mentioned, any efforts towards collecting data and entering data into the database will be considered as well. Next slide. All right, so the third bucket here I wanted to talk about is transit marketing. We actually had a few of these approved last year, and that's great. I hope to see a lot more this year. I think this project is it's really exciting to me because I think it does something that is lacking, I think, in our TDM world here in Virginia, which is aligning with and kind of partnering with the transit agencies that exist in your jurisdictions. I think that's critical. And for some reason, one or another, seems that sometimes, even though we're kind of parallel with the transit agencies, we're not completely working hand in hand. So I think this does a great job in doing that. And so, yeah, I'll go into this a little bit more. Next slide. Now, if you kind of scan over this slide, you'll see ridership mentioned several times, and really that's the name of the game here, and that's what this entire project really boils down to. Increasing ridership, and ultimately as a measure of success here, we kind of taken out the guesswork for you. It's really ridership, and increasing ridership is what we're looking for to be the ultimate outcome for any project you do here. So make sure as if you do go down this road, that's always kind of in the forefront of whatever you're working on, and should be really the focus of the project. I included this snapshot here. This is from LA Metro's I guess their version of WMATA, LA County's MTA. They did this unique ad, and it's you can't see it here, but the tagline to this was let the other superheroes wrestle with the traffic. And you know, it's a really engaging, really kind of not what you're used to seeing in terms of transit marketing. And you know, for me, and I think Kathy and Chris would agree too, we really want you all to be creative here, obviously within limits. You know, we're still public sector entities, and this is public money, so we do have some limitations. But you know, I think it's important to keep in mind, you know, marketing can, you know, has to be catchy. It has to be, you know, it has to be to some degree really unique to keep people's attention. And so that's what we're hoping to see with any transit marketing projects here. Of course, you know, there's always other angles you can go, but this, I think I saw this at Actus last year, and it really stuck with me because it was such a good attempt by a public sector entity, almost acting like a private sector in their marketing, you know, being catchy, being out there, being funny, recognizable. So I just want to explain that picture there real quick. Next slide. Again, quick rundown of what you can and can't spend here. I know this can be somewhat can confuse grantees sometimes, and we've come across issues with here. But I think that the key here is we don't want, again, to fund any similar kind of to the van pool, really those kind of core operating expenses for a transit agency, and that would include like the printing of schedules. These are all things that should be already covered. And odds are whatever agency you're working for is probably working with a DRPT transit grant, so these things are already covered by that and should be covered by that. And what I'm talking about specifically is under ineligible expenses. So that's what we want to avoid. We want any expense here to be solely focused on the advertising, the marketing, and the message and the communications, and really the ultimate whatever the ultimate goal is for increasing ridership. That's where we want the expenses to be focused. So make sure to keep that in mind as you fill out applications for this project. Next slide. And so here's the last bucket that I wanted to talk about, and it's the other projects, kind of similar to transit marketing. We hope to see a lot more of these come through. I kind of think of these as almost like a wild card in the sense that, you know, these are pretty open to anything that doesn't fall in those previous three buckets that I mentioned. So that'd be the employer trip reduction, van pool, transit marketing. Now, with that being said, you know, while we do want to see these, there are a lot of caveats to this as well, and we'll go into that. Next slide. I think what you should really focus on when you do these other projects is the why. The why must be very clear. And when I say the why, I'm referring to kind of the reason why you're doing this project and why you're proposing it. So there should be no guesswork on our end. A problem should be identified, and more so than, or I guess also in conjunction with identifying that problem, we want to know why the problem is there, and why you feel funding from the state should be used to solve the problem. So there are ton of different ways to do that. Here, you know, a couple that we suggested. You could reference regional plans. You know, if somebody else did the work into looking into this problem, for sure, let us know about it. Of course, we want to see things that are regional. You know, we don't want to see a study from Seattle, Washington that says, oh, here's the problem over here, and we kind of think we have the problem over here as well. No, we would, you know, really like to see something that's really based out of our region, our area. When you're talking about a study or a mandate, of course, any data you can have to back up why you think the problem is needs to be solved. I think that's going to be the key to these projects, or for us to approve any of these projects. And then in addition to really nailing home the why and the reason why, we want to see unique solutions to the problem. That doesn't mean like we won't approve something that's been done in the past, but you know, it's I think going to be beneficial to come up with, you know, a unique answer to solve the problem. So make sure when you are doing your research on this that you cover all those bases. And I think the more you do that, the better chance the project has of getting funded. And again, we really want to encourage programs to do this. There, as you know, a lot of gaps in our region that need to be filled. And this is the funding that can help do that. Next slide. So new for this year is this new approach that we have to CAP projects. Before, we had a separate scoring criteria for each of the various projects that we had, the employer outreach or employer trip reduction, van pool, et cetera. This year, we're moving to one scoring criteria for all of them. And how does that make things different? Well, I think the biggest key here is we're kind of lumping all these projects in together, so they're not going to be looked at separately. So I think it's really critical that you all pay attention to this, because in a sense, it's going to be more kind of a competitive process with all the projects now lumped together. So I'm not going to go over each category here. Kathy did a great job of doing that, but I will say, you know, at least from our end, I'll highlight again the milestone and event descriptions. We do see those year in and year out not being where they should be. And I think one thing I want to emphasize, and at least, or give some guidance on, is the milestone should be to some degree a reflection of your budget. Because in your budget, you have a detail of everything you're going to do and how much it's going to cost. The only thing missing from your budget is when you're going to do it. And that's basically what you want to say here in your milestone. So really, it should be kind of a schedule of what your budget is with the dates attached. Again, we know we have you all apply for these well in advance of when your project starts, you know, up to 6 months. Some cases more than a year, because you might not have a project start until, you know, the following January. So it could be a year before you're even thinking of doing something. So we know with that much time, nothing can be set in stone. Sometimes there are in terms of dates, but we definitely want you to give it a good shot and a good attempt at giving us a start date and end date. So I would say as you all start filling out your projects and you look at your milestones, make sure that they fully reflect what you're doing in your budget and what you have in your budget detail. And then jumping to the budget detail, that is again such a critical part for us to or critical category for us to help evaluate your grants. So make sure you have everything that needs to be listed out to support, you know, whatever that amount is for your line item. Make sure it's completely justified, and make sure you list everything that's going to pretty much make up what that expense line item is. So with that being said, I think we can move on to the next slide and Kathy, are you taking over here?
Yeah, let me pause there to see if there's any questions or
Oh, sure.
anything in
Yep.
the
Sorry
chat.
about that.
Yeah. No, so just to emphasize something, I think this is related to a chat question. That other category for CAP project assistance would be anything that wasn't part of the other three. So if you got some new idea or a new thing you want to do, um, that's where you want to apply under the other category. And the reason why we had these, employer trip reduction application, a van pool application, and a transit marketing application, because those seem to be the ones we get most often over the years. So we geared and Kathy will show you this in the demonstration, we geared through the application questions to those specific project types. The other one's a little bit more general, but it can cover anything else as long as it meets the objectives of the grant program. And then just an add little thing on the milestones. We're really hammering that. So milestones isn't just about marketing. It's things like if you're hiring a marketing contractor or you got a staff project administrator is vacant and you got to hire that person. Those are other things you should be putting into the milestones. When you're going to do that, if you're going to issue an RFP for marketing or something like that, those are also milestones. So it's not just about when you're going to do marketing. All right, got
Chris,
another
I'll
question.
also add, kind of selfishly almost, the milestones also are a tool for both Kathy and I to help manage the grants a lot better. And I think they're also a tool that we can use during our at this point quarterly meetings, but also our monthly meetings. And I think they can really streamline what we do and really help us, all of us, stay, kind of on top of what's going on with the grants. So I just wanted to add that as well.
All right, thanks, Gabe. We did get one more question, and it goes back to the travel costs. So travel costs for doing your, if you're meeting with an employer, you're meeting with a group of residents, you're out to a fair where you're, on site, you got a table, you're promoting, transit or carpooling event pool. Those travel things are covered in the grant. Those are okay. It's really when we send someone, to a conference or out of state for training, and they actually their time, their job is really mostly spent on things in their agency other than this grant. We're just not getting a benefit from that if we do that. It's probably something that DRPT would not do to staff here. So that's where we want to see, we'll invest in that training and those conferences and things to people who are devoting time to these projects, to devoting time to get people into carpools, van pools, transit, to get people to use the ride matching. So that's kind of why we made that little change. And on, your job has to be at least, halfway working on this project. So, but the daily stuff that you're doing to promote, the commute options to get people to use the ride matching systems, those travel costs are fine, even if you're only part-time for the project. Yes, this is being recorded, and maybe a day or so after this meeting, a link will be sent out to everyone who registered. All right, I don't see anything, but again, keep those chat questions coming. I don't see any hands raised or chat. So now we're going to try, we're going to test the boundaries of technology, and Kathy's going to share her screen. So yes, we will have the slide deck also available. Kathy's going to share her screen, and actually she's going to go into Web Grants and show you how do you go about applying for a grant and kind of walk you through. All right, Kathy.
All right.
There you
Thanks,
go.
Chris. So hopefully all of you have gone in to Web Grants and put your your name. You've got permissions to use Web Grants and stuff. So this is absolutely a little different than Olga. I feel it's easier. If I can do it, I think anybody would be able to do it. But I just want to let you know that Chris, Gabe, and I took a lot of time to put in guidance and requirement for completing the application in the Blue Book. So if you're doing a CAP operating application in Web Grants, it's on page 75 of the Blue Book. If you're doing CAP projects, it's page 86. It is detailed. It will tell you what to do, what not to do. So that's it will be your guide. We are more than happy to walk you through your application. But one other thing that I need to let you know is your application in Web Grants should be completed by someone within the applicant's agency, not a contractor. So just especially when it comes to signing the contract and stuff, all of that is going to be through Web Grants. The other thing I'm going to do before I start is I'm going to give you a disclaimer because based on time, this demo will not be completed as detailed as your grant application. So I just want to let you know that. So looking at my screen here, you can see we have Commuter Assistance Program operating, and we have Commuter Assistant Program Project Assistance. So I'm going to do the CAP operating first. So when you go into Web Grants, you are going to select this one. And this is what you will see. This talks about CAP operating. It gives a description of the program. There are no attachments or website links at this time. So what you're going to do is you're going to start a new application. So you're going to click on that. And this gives you step by step. It's going to tell you what to do. Anything in red is required. Whoops, sorry. Anything in red. So we're going to start the application title. I'm just going to put XYZ commuter help or commuter helper. That's going to be your application title is going to be what your program is called. Okay, I am a CAP tester. And then what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to move Chris up here if I can. No, I can't. So sorry. So then you're going to save this information. So I'm going to scroll down, and that's the information I just put in. Okay. The program area is transit. This is your application ID. I suggest that you write that down somewhere. You may not need it, but just in case, if your department has or your agency has different applications, I would write that down for yourself, but that's just who I am. So this is a transit program. This is CAP operating. This is your final application. Your status is editing. Okay, and then I will save the form. Down here, you can do additional contacts. So if you want to put your executive director on there as a contact or your manager on there, you can add their name in here. So I'm just going to put Chris in here, and they actually, he actually gets an email that this was submitted. So this is your application details box. So I just completed the general information. And then I've got the check mark and it's got the date and the time. So now I'm going to go into the description. So this is going to ask me questions, and this is where your project description comes in. So in Commuter Assistance Program, we have all the current programs listed in here. So I'm going to just select Rappahannock. The program manager is Lindsay Morris, and I apologize, Lindsay, if I spelt Lindsay wrong. But here's where you want to put your project description. Sorry, I got pages here. So again, go to the Blue Book and this slide presentation, it shows you what a good description will be. So this, let's see. This grant will support the following components of the RRRC commuter services program by oh, I can't. I just lost my thought. I just lost the other name of the program. I apologize. Through connecting VA by using the mobile and website, public engagement, events or promotional events. Just like I say, this is not set in stone, but it shows you what Rappahannock is going to do with their money.
Yeah, yeah,
So
just to add to what Kathy's saying. So yeah, this is where you're going to put in, and you could see down at the bottom of that text box, you start out with 1,000 characters and it counts
right.
down as you type. Use 1,000 characters to be very detailed and direct. I think you're going to have to be very direct about this is what this grant's going to fund. This is what we're going to do with the money. That's really what you want to show here. And that's, as we were saying, you get a 10-point score, up to 10 points on that score. Because that's really saying when we get questioned, what are they doing with the money? We're going to go right here, the description. And so, as Kathy mentioned, we get a lot of things that aren't really project descriptions in the past, and we're trying to cut down on that. We get a lot of things about the agency and the history and all this stuff. We really just want to know for this money, what are you going to do with it? And so that's what we're looking at here. And again, if you've got any questions as you're filling out your application, contact your program manager.
Yeah,
All right, thanks,
and you can actually contact us, show your screen, and we should be able to help you through it. So what I'm going to do, I've got all these three listed. I'm going to save it. And here's the information I just put in. And so I can mark as complete. So that takes me back to application details. And these are the components that all have to be filled out. So I go by lines, so I follow order, I guess you could say. So in the details, we have operating costs, we have other funding sources, we have revenues, and we have budget summary. So with the other funding sources, we do not want you to enter your local match amount. This is for state funds from any state or other agency, federal funds and donations. Okay. Revenues, anything generated by activities, expenses charged to the grant. And then the last one is the budget summary. You do not have to fill this out. It is automatically calculated.
No, actually, just
Is that one filled out?
you have to fill that out.
Okay.
So that is
Okay.
your total project expenses. So that's the grant plus your local match. That's the
Okay.
total. And as Kathy goes through, there is another section where you're going to then detail all those expenses. But this is just the total amount that you put in there. So
Okay.
yeah.
So next I'm going to do operating costs. Well, actually, I'm going to do this one, save the form first. That makes it easier. Okay. So here I'm going to go into the operating costs. So what I'm going to do is add entry. And this is where all your, what we used to call line items, we used to use. These are your budget categories. They are all in here. You know, for easy use. So select your budget category. And what we're going to do is in the expenses, you got 500 characters, staff members, oops, will serve. Whoops.
The key here is just like the other, if you've done these in Olga, is
Yeah.
be very detailed with all the budget categories, to put in, exactly what you'll be spending it on.
And so here you put in the total amount. You do not need to do the match amount. That is automatically calculated. And what we're going to do is we're going to save this row. And here is everything I just put in here. It's got the amount, it's got what I typed in, and it's salaries and wages. So then you're going to do an add entry again, and it's the same thing. Fringe benefits, fringe. Yeah, fringe to support staff. And then you'll put in your amount. And then you're going to save the row. And it's going to show up here. It's real simple. One thing I do want to show is do the indirect real quick. Indirect. And everything is saved here. Add an entry. One thing that I will do is dues and subscriptions. And I think Act is 675 now. Let's see. So we want you to describe what associations you're joining and the cost. And down here, we want the title or the total. So I'm going to do one where I actually don't put anything in. What was I going to do? Advertising promo. I'm not going to put anything in this box, but I'm going to put an amount. It'll let me. I'm going to save it. But when I go to mark as complete, it will not let me. It's going to give me an error message that I have not completed operating costs because this is left blank. So this is, as I mentioned before, anything in red is required. So I can go back and I can click on this and I can edit it. And I'm just going to put some fluff in there. And then you can go back and you can save the row. And this gives you your budget. other funding sources, and here it does, here it breaks out your 80-20 match. You can do mark as complete, but when you go mark as complete, it's gonna, each time, it's gonna tell you that your application cannot be submitted because application components are not complete. We still have staff marketing schedules and budget to do, okay? So now we're gonna go into the staff. And here are the directions, position titles of your organization staff whose time will be charged to the grant. So what you're going to do is you're going to add entry, position title, TDM coordinator. Let's see. Illustration, whoops. And again, remember I have a disclaimer, so then we want you to put in the percentage. So we're going to say, let's say 25% amount charged to the grant. So your salary and wages, you do have to break out to the amount charged to the grant. So I'm going to put 25,000 for fun. And then you save the row. And here's the information I just put in. And then I can add another staff person if I want. Financial coordinator, submission, claims, and budget. Again, they want the percentage of time, the percentage of time. So I'm going to say 15% and $8,000, and then save the row. Any contractor work. If you are hiring someone, some of you have contractors that do your marketing and stuff for you. This should be filled out. Okay, and so I've done the staff, the marketing. As you know, last year we had a spreadsheet that had many columns. We actually took time and sat down and went through, and we actually eliminated some of the rows that or the columns that we didn't feel that we needed or were completed correctly. So next we're going to fill out your marketing and promotional events. And this is going to be let's see, advertise local newspaper. Description, print, and digital ads. The purpose to increase awareness. How are we doing on time? Okay. Connecting. Courage. Okay. The call to action. Bill direct. Add placement media, half page, advertisement, and billboards. And then we want you to put in the approximate cost for it. And then save the row. So that's pretty simple. You can mark as complete. And then again, it takes you back to the beginning and shows you you have schedules to do, which is your milestones. So this is the program schedule. So what you're going to do is add entry, and you're going to put the project start date, which will be July 2024, July 1st, 2024, and your end date will be June. Let's 25. So, and that is your program schedule. And then you're going to save that road. This is your milestones and events. If you hit mark as complete, it will not let you save the application because you have to put stuff in here. So milestone, we are going to put, let's see, social media, Facebook, page maintenance, description. Okay, then what you're going to do in here is you're going to put what day will it start. So let's say we start at February. Oh, we're in 2025, but we'll just, and then it's going to end March 1st. And then what you're going to do is you're going to save your row. And as you scroll down, you can see what you typed. You're going to want to add another entry in there and say you're doing DRPT connects businesses. Let's say work with DRPT to promote employers. Start date, we can do sorry. Say we do February again 1st, and these are just, I'm just showing you the dates. I'm not setting this in stone. To the 29th, save your row, and again your milestones is all set here, and we can mark it as complete. And then the last one we have is the budget. So this is where it asks for the total cost of your budget. And this is where you have to, whoops, edit form, sorry. You have to certify that you have permission of your organization, whoever it may be, to submit this application for state funding. You certify, and then we'll put Lindsay. And then today's date, save form. Okay. And you can mark as complete. And your application is completed. When you get all these checks, what you can do is you can preview your application, which is it's a nice feature. I like this. And here is everything that you put in. You've got your salaries and wages. your revenue breakdown, contractor work, marketing, everything in your application. It's much easier. So you can also withdraw your application if you have to. You can edit it until you submit it. So we're just going to go back, and then it says submit application. It's going to give you this, that please confirm if you wish to submit this application, because once you do it, there's no editing this document. Okay. Just that's why I find the preview feature is nice. So I think that's it for the commuter or cap operating. Do you want to do questions, Chris, or just go on to the next one? We got a half hour.
You could keep going to the CAP project assistance.
Okay.
Just while you're doing that, just a couple questions. So someone asked about, can you cut and paste? If you want to like write things down, but like the project description in like a Word document, so you can review it and edit and things like that. Yeah, you should be able to cut and paste from that over. You cannot cut and paste from prior applications that you made in Olga because they're just not loaded in here right now. So if you have another document, you can certainly cut and paste. So another question about, are there required attachments? So you can attach things to your application. There is that feature. I don't know, Kathy, if you want to show them.
I did not show that.
Where,
So again, remember I told you about the ID. This is ID 974. This is the one I just did. So I'm going to open it, edit application, and here's attachments here. Oh, there's nothing attached.
yeah, so you can add things. So as far as required attachments, nothing like when we required the supplemental application. Certainly that's not there anymore. But if you have things like a resolution from your board approving the grant or approving the match and approving the match, those are always good things. If you got, letters of support or things like that, those are always good things to attach to the application. But I know, for board approvals, I know people run on different schedules, so we don't always get them at the time that you apply. But certainly, if you have them, certainly attach them. That's always a good thing. All right, go ahead, Kathy, and demo the CAP project assistance.
Okay. So this is the CAP project. Again, it describes what it is, what we look for, the types of things you can apply for. And we're going to start a new application. I am not going to do an application because it's so similar to what I just did. But I'm going to have to put something in. And I'm going to save the form. It's the exact same thing. Additional. And so you have here, we did that, the type. So when you go into the type, this is where you're going to find the different projects listed. So employer trip reduction, I'm going to click on that, and you're going to fill out the description, the service area. It asks you for the project manager, the title, and here's your sales. How many employees will be contacted. Easy hit up and down button, meetings, transit, and your project results, the measurements, your financial assistance and incentives, and VDOT or jurisdiction project changes. There is details here in each one of these applications that's going to help guide you. And again, if you're not sure, contact Chris, Gabe, or I. Okay, so those are the questions for the commuter or employer trip reduction, transit marketing. You will come down here and you're going to get different questions. Okay, for transit marketing. Here they want the project results, the measurements, and the financial incentives. And of course, there's going to be more questions with budget, just as the other ones. A van pool. It's going to ask you the service area, the map, the manager, the purpose, the results, measurement of results, interaction with riders, providers, van pool data collection for NTD. Okay, so as you see, when I click on each different project type, it comes up with different questions. And this is the other. You're going to have the purpose, results, measurement of results, and financial assistance incentives. That is about it. Chris, did I miss anything? Go too fast?
No, I think you could show them that if you go back, that the components for budget and milestones and things are for CAP projects are going to be very
Oh,
similar.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
very similar to the CAP operating. So that's why Kathy's not going through. But as you could see, when you select your project type, you get a different set of questions. And
at
so
the beginning, yeah.
at the beginning. So there may be some things in the questions that are not applicable necessarily to what you're going to be, having as expenses. You may just have to put NA in there just to satisfy that something was completed in there. Of course, we try to make a lot of it mandatory so we don't miss anything. But if there, so like Kathy mentioned, one of them had incentives. If you don't have incentives with your project, you can just put NA and that web grants will say, okay, good, you completed it. So just
Right.
wanted to highlight that. So
Okay.
any questions on applications? Marcus, I hope that other project that answered your question about it. There's a separate, just questions for the project type, and the other project would cover anything that's not a van pool, transit marketing, or employer trip reduction.
Okay. I
So,
can stop
okay.
sharing.
All right, very good. We can go back to the slides. All right, thanks. Thanks, Kathy, and thanks,
Of course.
Miriam. I'm going to cover some, take it home for covering some resources where you get some of this information. So in the DRBT website, if you go under our grant programs, that very first option, Web Grants Application Resources, if you click on that, next slide, whoops. There should be a next slide. There we go. So you come to this page. This is all things web grants. This is the snapshot, so we can't really scroll down. But you could see there at the bottom of that image, there's the link to the web grants page to log in. And then if you go down even further on that page, there are how-to guides and training demonstration videos to go through how you do certain things like complete an application, but also things on how to file a reimbursement claim, and other things like that. So this is a good resource for all the web grants information that you'll need right there. So it's all covered in the DRPT website, and so you don't have to go outside. Like Olga was always an external, page to the DRPT website. All right, next slide. So I'm just going to recap some of the things we discussed, some hit the highlights, and then some just reminder of some more good resources for you. Okay, next slide. All right, so just recap on, we're trying to show you like what's going to be a good application. So you do the best application you can, so you get the highest score. So as we keep said more than once, a good detailed project description is key, right? That's telling us what you're going to spend the money on and how you're going to spend it. the budget details, as Kathy was running through the web grants demo, when you selected your budget category, be sure in that, you know, details box that you're putting in everything that you're going to spend it on, so that we understand exactly where the money's going. As we mentioned earlier, keep your administration costs for the grant low. That's a good thing. That's going to give you a favorable score. You know, any salaries and staff or contractors that are going to be charged to the project, make sure that they're really focused on the work that they do, are focused on getting more ride matching requests or increase in the use of transit, carpool, and vanpool. That should be the main focus of those salaries, staff expenses. Include a lot of milestones, not just the start and end date of the project, but also all those things you're going to do in the meantime, including, you know, obviously all the marketing. But if you know you're doing promotions in April, say you're going to, you know, some festival where you're going to have a table and you're going to promote, you're going to have, you know, things to promote carpooling and ride matching and transit and things, you know, you may not know the exact date of it, but you could put a date in there if you know about the month. So all those things really need to be, you know, put in the milestones as much as possible. And then also efficiency. So the results of getting, you know, ride match requests or other results that you're trying to get from the project. You know, the lower the cost and the higher the results, the better your application is going to score. So obviously, if, you know, two projects are going to get the same results, and one project costs $1 million and the other one costs $500,000, the one that costs $500,000 is going to get a higher score, right? That's kind of where we're looking at on efficiency. And then keep in mind the scoring that we went through. Keep that in mind as you're completing your application, so you can kind of make sure that you're answering these questions and putting in the details that will get you the highest score possible. All right, next slide. I did put a link to the Blue Book in the chat, but it's on our DRPT website under the, you know, the grants page. In fact, if you go to the Commuter Assistance Program in a grants and in the DRPT website, you'll see a link to the Blue Book and other things. Your DRPT program manager is a great resource also. And then specifically for web grants assistance, so not necessarily, you know, the application itself or your project details, but the web grants, how to use web grants. We have an email help set up, and there's the link, there's the email there, webgrants@drpt.virginia.gov. Please use that if you got a question about anything that's specifically for web grants. We also have help office hours from noon to 1 weekdays. And on that DRPT website and the web grants page, there is a link to that. It's another Teams kind of meeting. But it's in that page. And next slide. And then these are our phone numbers and email addresses if you want to reach out to us directly. And that's the end of our workshop. I'm checking for chat or questions. I'll give you a minute if you want to type in a question, or raise your hand if you want to ask a question. We can open up your mic. And again, this has been recorded. The link will go out, so you'll have all of this information, including the Kathy's demonstration, which I think will be a good help for folks to review as they get into web grants. We know it's early December, and a lot of folks may not have gone in there to start things yet. All right, I do not see any questions in the chat. I do not see any hands raised. Miriam, if I'm missing something, let me know. But if there's nothing further, I think we can end this workshop. And I want to just thank everyone for attending. I know it was a little long, but hopefully you got some good information out of it, and we helped you to submit a really good application. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.